I think one of the big lessons, especially traveling out in the world when you get into the developed world, is that this is sort of a lesson for all U.S. cities that we all just need to think bigger. We sort of, the enemy is the pretty good. It's pretty good here in Kansas City. And you go to places like Columbia, and it's not great. And so their solutions to sort of reinvent their city are bold and big and huge and massive. And so how can we think bigger?
Which Columbia are you
Colombia, the country of Colombia. Medellin, Colombia, one of the, I tell the story this way. In 1996, it was the most dangerous city, and it was declared the most dangerous city in America. And today, 20 years later, it's one of the most innovative. But it's because the leaders there said, we are literally going to reinvent everything from the way government works to public transportation, all in support of entrepreneurship. And that was 20 years ago. And it had never occurred to me to think about that public transportation could drive entrepreneurship. They built $1 billion train down the middle of Medellin, and these really cool gondolas, I don't even know what to call them, but these that help people from the poor villages up in the hills get down to the city so they can have jobs and create businesses. And so I think it's diversity, collaboration, trust, sort of one. We need to think bigger. So just as an example, I'll just use the airport as an example. Like for some people in the community, it looks like only 25%, but some people in the community, the airport was good enough. But to say we need a 21st century, we need to go big. We need to think bigger. We need to reinvent the way our airport works. It's such a great example of Kansas City leaning into thinking big. I think the streetcar, to credit to whoever made that happen. I think it needs to be longer and bigger and actually be public transportation over time. But that's that thinking bigger thing. And I think a lot of towns in the Midwest, cities and communities in the Midwest where I'm from. Our humbleness sometimes holds us back, and our things are pretty good. But to really jump up in this new era, really accelerate, we just have to think. We have to think bigger. We have to take bigger swings, take bigger actions, take on huge, intractable challenges. Diversity and inclusion in Kansas City is one to me that it's obvious as a new resident. We just need to do more. Yeah. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know people are working on it. But we all need to work on it.
Yeah. Well, in the face of the humbleness and maybe reluctance to take risk, how do you remain optimistic or steadfast into the mission? How do you kind of talk about that here in the office, and I guess where do you find that kind of resolve?
Say that one more time.
Just curious about your resiliency. Where does that come from?
Oh, I got it. Yeah, totally. I think the resiliency is driven by excitement. There isn't a new emerging model of economic development that is coming forth, and it's here. And because of the exponential growth in technology and connectivity, the economy of the entire world is changing. And what we're trying to do is just sort of help people understand and maybe explain the phenomenon, and then empower individuals to act within it. Entrepreneurs, how do you take advantage of this completely different set of rules around the world? And so the society and civilization has already made that decision. We're along for the ride to help again explain and encourage people to really jump on the entrepreneurship train. But it's going to take rethinking everything, rethinking our education systems, rethinking how we help entrepreneurs, rethinking how we deal with diversity, inclusion, all of that. But I think that a place like Kansas City is so well positioned to be a leader, and it already is a leader in thinking about that stuff. And whether that's education, inclusion, smart cities, public transportation, what a cool time to be alive, right? What a cool time to be alive. Everything is shifting, and the friction and the pain and I think the fear and the anxiety we have is just because we're literally shifting economic epics, and there's been 4 epics of human history. We were hunter-gatherers, then we moved to farms, and we were agrarian, then we shifted into cities. That's the industrial age, and we are literally shifting into this new age that we don't even have a name for because it just got here. But we'll look upon this period of time 20, 30, 40 years now and go, and 2008-ish, the world we shifted in this new era. And so as a Kauffman Foundation, our goal is to help communities better understand what they can do to ride that shift, and to really empower the makers, the doers, and the dreamers, if you will, to take advantage of that as well. I mean, so whether it's on a system level or an individual entrepreneur level, what a cool time to be alive.
Yeah. Great. Well, last question, just wanted to wrap up with,
Sure.
Might be multiple parts, but what is the next 6 months looking like for you and your role? And
Sure. So we've spent, I've been here about a little short of a year. So a lot of that has been just listening really to ecosystem builders and entrepreneurs. And you're beginning to see us sort of put up some of the tent poles around the program. So the first component is the eShip Summit, which is an annual gathering of ecosystem builders from around the country and the world. The second component is the very beginnings of a knowledge base on how to do ecosystem building. That's the Kaufman Playbook. The Kaufman Playbook it's very incomplete and in very much draft form. And we're taking sort of a swing on explaining some of this and really asking the community in Kansas City next week at Entrepreneurship Week on Thursday night, Wednesday night, to help us give us your feedback and your thoughts. And then that all leads to the third component of the work, which is how do we begin applying some of what we're learning and some of the models and some of the strategies in Kansas City and other communities, and really begin to use Kaufman's strength in research to really try to prove out, rigorously prove out what works, and then share that with the world.
Yeah, and from the point of view of what Andy works on, how it fits into the larger picture of Kaufman's entrepreneurship strategy, we focus on ecosystems and ecosystem building. We focus on entrepreneurial learning at the individual level. Then we also focus on market gaps. So how do we serve those who have been historically underserved? So it all builds on each other. It goes from individual to large. And so the change that we're trying to affect is how do we get people to take action, whether it's writing that business plan, advocating for more connectivity in their community, or finding the people to bring them into the conversation, right? So it's a really beautiful synergy that we're having kind of exist here. I think the kind of three inflection points that Andy just mentioned around the summit and the playbook, at the beginning of the year we have State of Entrepreneurship Address where we're kind of laying out, here's our focus for the next year, and then you kind of see it all come to life throughout the year. So it's not wrapped in a beautiful bow, but there is a method to the madness there, which is it's nice to see it come to life.
And one really, I think, important point related to all the stuff I just said. Like, we don't have all the answers. This is an emerging field. And what we're going to try to do is sort of provide the rails and some guidance as to where we think the field's going. But what it really takes is people engaging in ecosystem building and entrepreneurship and helping us learn from that experience, sharing their stories, sharing what's working, sharing what isn't working, because sometimes that's more helpful. And we're very much taking taking the viewpoint that the answers aren't inside the Kaufman Foundation. The answers are out there. We're just trying to gather it all together. And what has been really inspiring to me is the diversity and the myriad of people that are doing ecosystem building in their communities. Sometimes it's like entrepreneurs like Kansas City Startup Foundation. Sometimes that's universities like SourceLink. Sometimes that's venture capitalists, media organizations, co-working spaces, concerned citizens, and it's a really neat. Well, back to my original point of sort of like the strength and diversity and inclusion is like getting everyone involved. Entrepreneurship really is a community sport, and ecosystem building is really about how do we get everyone involved in supporting and lifting up and helping our entrepreneurs.
All right. Awesome. Well,
Plenty of content.
Yeah,
hopefully.
absolutely. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Cool.
You let me talk longer than I thought I was going to talk. It's great.
What's your